Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the 90s nostalgia podcast that for one day and one day only doesn't like the 90s. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, and joining me is my co-host, Stu Joslin. Stu, are you feeling negative today?
Feeling pretty negative, yeah. Feeling as negative as a man who's just had to splash out on a new rear wiper motor for his car. So yes, I'm in the right frame of mood for this, I think.
Well, that's excellent because as listeners will know, if they've read the episode description, we are talking about things that we don't like in the 90s. This is the first time we've ever done this after, well, coming up to 3 years now, I think. So it's, it's a slightly odd one for us. We're going the exact opposite of what we normally do, but more on that later. Before we get into that, though, today's episode is brought to you in partnership with GWR FM. So for the month of May, you will hear regular audio clips of It'll Be Alright in the 90s throughout the overnight programming. That's between midnight and 6 a.m. on GWR FM. And over here on It'll Be Alright in the 90s, we will be celebrating the continued excellence of the Southwest's premier live radio station, Great Western Radio. So we'll be celebrating that on our social media posts and within the podcast themselves. So it's an exciting partnership for both It'll Be Alright in the 90s and GWR FM. You can tune into GWR at 102.2 on your FM dials for Chippenham, Corsham, Callan and Trowbridge, or 96.3 FM for Bristol and North Somerset. So that's this episode's partner, GWR FM. That's exciting, isn't it, Stu?
That's wonderful. Yeah, really exciting. I knew that Jeff had been working on the deal to sort of get us onto mainstream radio. I know it might be a small start with the midnight to 6 a.m. Slots that you'll be describing there, but absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping we might get a ride in one of the Black Thunders. What do you think? Do you reckon we might be able to swing that?
Remind me what they are again.
I'm sure the GWR had just had some black 4x4s called the Black Thunders that would go around like giving out prizes and doing random things, or you could like walk up to it and demand a $5 or something. I can't quite recall, but they definitely had a fleet of vehicles called the Black Thunders.
Wow, sounds like the president of the United States in a fleet of black 4x4s. So,
definitely. Lest we forget, my dad got his Wembley Rolling Stones tickets in 1990 from the good people at GWR. So a little bit of history for you there as well. It's great to have them on board for sure.
Time now to have a look at what's on the notice board this week. Stu, have you got anything over there?
I certainly have. First of all, a throwback to our last pod notice board.
Oh, there it is. There it is. The missing piece of the Aston Villa goalkeeper jersey puzzle.
Well, two problems.
Oh, what's that?
First of all, it stinks of fags. Secondly, it's far too small. This is a child size. So it's already been through the wash twice, but you still get the good whiff of Benson and Hedges off of it. So I'll probably stick it through a third time. But hey, it's in the collection now, and they only seem to come up in child sizes. So there's that. I'm pleased to have it.
Yeah, this is back in the 90s when 12-year-olds were just smoking B&H between the sticks, on a Saturday down at the park.
Definitely, that's authentic 90s tab smoke there. Secondly, it also picked up this little gem for not very much money, and you might recognise this design classic. I hope you do, because it's from your favourite World Cup.
Oh, it's
what do you reckon to that?
Classic Adidas goalkeeper template. That's fantastic. Where'd you get that from? Was that eBay as well?
With the number 1 on the back. That's another eBay find. Yep, that's really, really fantastic. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. It's in great condition. So yeah, that's coming to a five-a-side court near you soon. A couple of events coming up I'd just like to mention, if that's okay with you, mate.
Yeah.
Both in the Swindon area, so any Swindon-based listeners might be interested in these. First of all, I'm going to be appearing at another 90s Premier League football ground. I'm going to be playing at Swindon Town in the next few weeks, which is really exciting. Going to be playing in goal at the county ground. Yeah, that's on Wednesday, the 15th of May. Really looking forward to that. So I'll report back when that takes place. And the other thing is that we've got another 90s night on the horizon, haven't we?
We have indeed, yes. The decks are coming back out.
They are indeed. The platters that matter, the wheels of steel. We are going to be appearing at the Hop Chapel, which is in Broadtown on the outskirts of Swindon, on Saturday, the 18th of May, and that's from 7 o'clock. So if you are in the Swindon area, the Hop Chapel's a lovely bar anyway, so please do come down, say hello, and listen to us spinning some 90s bangers. We'd love to see you there. One more thing that I didn't buy on eBay was a Vauxhall Lotus Carlton, which I sent you the link for. I didn't know if we might be able to dip into some of the Apple Podcast money. As Has Jeff said anything to you about that, by the way? I still haven't seen anything. I've not
No,
seen
nothing.
anything land in the account or anything, no?
Nothing at my end at all. No.
Hmm.
No, it's I'm still funding my own way in every respect with this podcast. It's no petty cash or expenses to be had here yet. So
I mean, the carton's only 75 grand, so it would be like small change from that pot that we've got coming to us, right?
yeah, it was a big deal for sure that we struck with the guys over there at Apple. So it wouldn't be a huge amount of it, but
I did see something that was a bit more within our price range, possibly, which was a barn find Vauxhall Calibra for about £500, which might have been more within our reach. But then I thought there's going to be a load of work to get it up to standard, and I just don't think either of us are capable of doing that. So maybe it's best if we avoid it.
Time now to delve into our mailbag, and we have a few things in here. So I'll start off, actually, I think, Stu. And this sort of comes with a bit of an inbuilt apology, because I should have read this out when Craig sent this message in back at the time. So this was husband of the pod, Craig Fletcher, sent a message in about the most 90s track and field athletes, which we did a few episodes back. And he says he was such a big fan of track and field in the 90s that he used to stand in front of the TV and run on the spot and pretend to jump over the hurdles. It's classic childhood sort of, when you're desperately like into something like that, but you can't really do it. Like, there was no hurdles set up around the primary school fields. Well, not for me anyway. So you kind of just had to make do with what you had, even if that was just standing in front of the TV. So that was a nice recollection from husband of the pod, Craig Fletcher.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I definitely took part in things like that myself, particularly with regards to Top of the Pops. I remember my parents had an odd spare stair rod or curtain rod or something hanging around that I used to play guitar with when Top of the Pops was on, and Top of the Pops 2 as well. So I used to do it with the older music as well when Top of the Pops 2 was on a weekday evening. So yeah, fond memories of taking part in a small way in the things that you're interested in. Definitely, I'd love to hear any more of those anyone's got.
Yeah, I wonder what the last thing we ever did like that was. It's like those sort of nostalgia memes you get on 2-bit Instagram channels. It's like there was one time when you went and played out with your friends until it got dark, and it was the last time you ever did it, but you didn't know. That sort of nonsense. But I wonder what the last time you got that curtain rail down and played guitar to it. I guess it was probably merged quite quickly into having a real guitar for you, didn't it?
I think so, yeah. Around about 1999, 2000. The difference is those Instagram accounts are 2-bit and we're tin pot. There's a big difference there.
Oh, yeah.
Massive difference.
It's all about the terminology. What about you, Stu? What have you got over there?
I've got one here from Alex Mitchell. He has sent me I saw this and thought of you post that he saw. And it's somebody uncredited. So apologies for not being able to put a name to this creation. But somebody has created their own Cadbury selection box, but using their most famous 90s chocolate bars and chocolate sweets that are no longer being produced, or in the main are no longer being produced. So let me take you through what we've got here. We've got 6 items on this 90s selection box from Cadbury's. We've got a Whisper Mint, a Snowflake, a Taz, some Astros, a Fuse bar, and a Dream bar. So there you go. That's absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I saw one of those in the shop tomorrow, I'd buy like 10 of those.
Yeah. Yes. I think I would replace I do like white chocolate, but I think I would replace the Dream with a Spira in terms of like what was most iconic in the 90s. But other than that,
I think you've already got the white chocolate covered with the Snowflake, haven't you? So you could probably swap out the Dream for a Spira there on that front. But no, thanks, Alex, for sending that in. And a great reminder of what once was and what hopefully will still be again one day if this podcast ever gets its way.
This next one is from Legend of the Pod, Hannah Kelly, and she says, I'm glad you had some kind words to say about Simply Red in the latest episode. This was me, of course. I mean,
I was going to say, did we?
Stu, you're bulky. This was me admitting that I'd found myself slightly drawn to Simply Red when we were researching our last random top 40 episode. And she says, my mum also had the album on cassette, but unlike Stu, we listened to it a lot on car journeys, and I embraced it and still know all the words to every song. I get warm nostalgic feelings when I hear songs from Stars. And she also says, other memories from that top 10 include being obsessed with Black or White and riding my bike in circles in the garden, singing just a chorus over and over at the top of my voice. My parents and neighbours must have hated it. I say there's worse 90s pop sentiments that you can shout over and over again, and it's okay to be black or white, you know?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
90s suburbia. It's probably a good message.
I wonder what the equivalent child today would ride their bike around in circles in the garden, singing a chorus of over and over again. Probably a song from the latest Taylor Swift album. I shouldn't wonder.
Right, let's move on. we're turning into a different sort of show.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, apologies.
This is something you asked me to follow up recently, Stu. I think it was either the last episode or the episode before, where I revealed that Request the 90s, one of our friends on Twitter, or X as it's now known, revealed that they had met Quentin Wilson, and your interest was piqued, like deeply, and you said I must investigate further. So I went back to Request the 90s and asked for, pled really for, is that the word, pled or pleaded?
Pleaded? I think it's pleaded.
I pleaded for more information, and they got back to me and they said, I only met him very briefly, but he seemed like a nice chap. So,
oh, well, that's okay. That's enough for me then.
Yeah.
As long as I have confirmation that he was a nice guy, then that's absolutely fine by me.
Yeah.
So nice one, Quentin, and still the offer, if you're listening, is still there for you to come on anytime you like, and we would love to chat to you.
Yeah, we've heard you're a nice chap, so you're welcome on.
You passed the first test.
Which, let me tell you, not all of our prospective guests do pass. So I won't say any more about that.
There's a stringent policy that all of our guests must pass each point before they're extended an invitation. And yes, we have had some in the past who have not passed all of those points. So there we go. It's like the 300-point servicing check you get on a network queue used car. That's how we.
That's what we based on.
That's exactly what we based it on. Yeah. So as long as your seatbelts are okay and your headlights are working, then you can come on the show. That's fine.
Plus 298 other points.
We're nothing if not rigorous.
Stu, we have a bonus guest.
Excellent. Fantastic. Who is it? Who's knocking on the door?
Well, we are delighted to be joined again by diarist, zine-maker and 90s archivist Theresa Stenson, who is back again after her recent smash hit episode with her teenage diaries. Theresa, how's it going?
Oh, hi guys. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, I'm thrilled again.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Great to be here.
So, Theresa, we've got you back on to give us another reading from your infamous 90s teenage diaries. And well, I asked you actually if you could choose an entry that was maybe connected to today's topic, which is things we didn't like from the 90s. And I think you have got something that will maybe fit that.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So when you said things that you guys were moving into talking about stuff that you didn't enjoy so much about the 90s. So when you kind of gave me that as a brief, I was a bit like, oh crap, I don't think I have anything. But then I kind of remembered this cultural incident, I'll call it, that occurred in the 90s that I wasn't happy about at all, and took to the pages of my diary to kind of rant about. So I thought what would be fun is we can kind of make like a mini game out of it. I'll read the entry because I think it gets clearer as I go on what it is that I'm talking about, but I don't say it from the outset. And as each line kind of gets read or revealed, I think the pen will start to drop over what it is that I'm unhappy about.
Can I add a bit of extra spice here?
Yeah.
I'm going to make a prediction now. I'm writing it down.
Oh, okay.
And then if it turns out to be correct, I'll show you the page. Or I'll reveal what my pre-prediction was.
Okay.
Okay, so that's written down now in the book.
Yeah.
Oh.
And we'll see what happens at the end.
Yeah, I had a feeling out of the two of you. I kind of thought that Stu might be more in tune with this, but maybe that's too big of a clue actually to have given.
Oh, blimey! It's not whether Paul McGrath is going to be fit for the 1994 League Cup final, is it? The race against time with his shoulder injury.
Okay.
Me and Stu will both buzz in as well during the reading, and if we think we've got it, we'll buzz in.
Okay.
Yeah, take it away.
Okay. So it begins with, I cannot believe it, and believe is like written with loads of E's in it, like Victor Meldrew.
Strong start, very strong start.
Yeah. How could it ever happen? That stupid, agitating song ever, 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 ever get to number one. It's a crime, scandal, shock. I hope Take That are okay.
Stu, I'm buzzing in. I'm buzzing in here.
Okay. Are you going to say what it is with the buzz, or are you just going, I think I know it?
Do you want to, maybe you could write it down as in addition to your other guess, if it's different, and you could say like, this is my guess from halfway through, and I'm still none the wiser. I have a feeling I'm not going to get this, but yeah, keep going and I'll see.
Okay. Yeah. So I hope Take That are okay. I bet Mark's upset. And then this is the kind of the line that you have to get from this. I think Alex, even you'll get it, even if that has meant nothing to you so far. That pathetic, dumb, pink and yellow rubber Johnny.
Yeah, I know what it is. And it's a great turn of phrase. I mean,
yeah, so adolescent, but so embarrassing.
Well, it's going to be on or around Christmas Day 1993, so in the lead up 21st or 22nd of December, something like that.
Yeah, 19th of December. Yeah,
19th of December 1993.
Yeah.
So my first guess when you said cultural incident, see it there. I had Jarvis Cocker at the Brits written down.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you mentioned if Take That are okay, I went for Mr. Blobby, Christmas number one.
Yeah.
There we go.
And then I actually I've actually drawn a picture of Mr. Blobby as well at the bottom of the page. So I'll show it to you guys, but I'll describe it. I was writing in purple felt tip as well at this time. So it's a purple picture of Mr. Blobby, and then it says "I'm a dick" under it. I've actually drawn a dick. So that's awful. I'm so sorry for showing you that.
Well, you've really dragged us into the dirt here, haven't you? With all this phallic stuff going on about rubber johnnies and
I know. Dear. It's okay. You don't have to include it now that you know what it is. You're like, maybe not.
Do you think we might have to get the bleep machine out, Alex? What do you think?
I think Dick's right on the it's on the cusp, isn't it? It's on the threshold of the bleep machine. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to consult Jeff. I think.
Yeah. And Theresa, you were saying this off air that actually this is from your diary that has the lock on it. Is that true?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I think that's why that's a bit out of character for me to have drawn that little doodle. I wasn't going. It's not like I was making a habit of that, but I think in this diary, because it had a lock on, I felt a bit like uninhibited or something. Yeah, it's got a lock on it, and actually like it was kept in a box with a little padlock, but I actually used to keep the keys in the same box as the diary and the padlock. So if anybody wanted to break into it, they could. But I just think there was something about the fact that it had a lock on it that just kind of made me feel like I could write more freely or something in this diary. So yeah.
That's fantastic, Theresa. And you are sticking around with us now to discuss What's the Most 90s, aren't you? I think you're going to join us for that particular feature.
Yeah.
I think we should just go straight into it, actually. Stu, do you want to tell us what today's What's the Most 90s is?
Yeah, certainly. This is a big one. There's lots of famous examples from the 90s here. So I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody's come up with. This week, we're discussing What's the Most 90s tattoo? Let's go with our guest first. Theresa, what do you think?
Well, two straight away come to mind. So I'll just say the first one, and it's the dolphin tattoo. And when that came, because there are so many, this is such a good talking point because there are actually quite a lot, aren't there? Like once I had the dolphin, then I was like, there were a few more. But when I kind of thought, why did I think dolphin? Because I didn't know anybody with a dolphin tattoo. But then I remembered, Stu, who had a dolphin tattoo famously?
Was it Mark Owen?
Mark Owen, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, on his hip.
I don't know where I dragged that from, but yeah, no, I remember it now. Yeah, I remember that now. Blimey.
Yeah, so that was the first thing that came in was like, oh yeah, the blue dolphin. Like dolphins were obviously everywhere, and I think you guys have talked about that before, I'm sure. The dolphin motif, but I do remember the dolphin tattoo being big, maybe more in like the early 90s. I think the other things that I bet we will talk about happened a bit later on.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I was also thinking about dolphins. I have gone for one that's sort of very specific in that a celebrity had it, but also I think was a bit of a trend just generally, and that's barbed wire. So going round the bicep or a circle maybe on around the navel, something like that. Most famous, of course, from Pamela Anderson, which I didn't realize she got it for the film because she just wanted to avoid having to have it drawn on every day before filming, so she just got the tattoo.
Right.
Subsequently removed, I read from 2014. I think she got rid of it, so she fell out of love with it. But yeah, there just seems to be a lot of it around. You don't see many people getting them new now, I don't think. But very much. I don't know if it was started by Pamela Anderson, but she's the most famous wearer of it, I think. And yeah, that's why I went for it.
Yeah, that was my second one. When I said that two came straight away. It was a dolphin, and it was barbed wire. But I actually was thinking more about a lot of guys. I remember Pamela having it, and celebrity tattoos were kind of like a big feature of the 90s in general, weren't they? Anyway, I think. But I was thinking, it was quite like a lot of men had them around the upper arm, and then I remembered about Pamela and the film and so on. But yeah, that's a really good one.
What about you, Stu?
I have again gone for a specific example, and I've gone for the Mel C Celtic sort of chain band thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mel C, obviously my favourite Spice Girl, and I think this was one of the reasons that I picked out amongst the rest of the Spice Girls to be my favourite, because the tattoos weren't that common then. Like now, like every member of every pop group you care to name is covered in them. But this really was something that was striking and stood out. And I remember that Top of the Pops magazine actually did a giveaway of a transfer version, so that you could have your own Celtic band tattoo, which I proudly sported for a few days. My dad had a submission here. I asked him his opinion on what's the most 90s tattoo, and he responded with one he's actually got, which is the John Bon Jovi Superman logo on the bicep, which he saw on John Bon Jovi and thought, I'll have a bit of that, and had that put on him by a drunk man in Corsham Town Centre. So that's...
Was it in a tattoo parlour or just in a town centre?
just in the town centre.
I just thought you meant just on the streets, actually.
I am led to believe that it was in a actual tattoo parlour, but that the tattooist himself maybe was not 100% ready to do the job that day. But yeah, so I've gone for the Mel C sort of Celtic band, which is my favourite tattoo from the 90s and one that sticks in my mind the most.
Yeah, I thought, as the more that I thought about it, I was like, it wasn't just barbed wire. There was like a lot of Celtic imagery and, and Chinese symbols. That was...
Yeah, absolutely.
They were just, they were so popular. And then you'd hear about people getting like things written on them that weren't exactly what they thought and so on.
Yeah, that was my second choice, was Chinese or Japanese characters. But I think Mel C also had one of these, didn't she?
I think she did. She had the big crucifix on the opposite arm as well eventually. So she did add to them as time went on. Yeah.
I think she might have been girl power in Japanese or Chinese lettering, maybe on her arm, somewhere near that Celtic band, I think.
Well, there were a few strong contenders there for sure, but what are we going to decide goes in the ledger as our most 90s tattoo?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because they're three cast iron 90s tattoo designs. I don't think any of us disagree with anyone else's, so it's tough. It could be a draw, or
maybe think about what somebody wouldn't choose today, because I think like somebody could still maybe have a dolphin. I don't know if people would choose the other, like the barbed wire. I think the Celtic stuff could come back, and I think people would still go for that.
I think the most sensible thing for us to do would be all to meet up and go and get all of these tattoos and then put it to the popular vote. What do you think? Actually, in the real world.
Yeah, let's all meet up in the tattoo parlour in Corsham Town Centre.
Yep.
Bring a couple of tinnies for the tattooist, and get each of our own suggestions.
Mention my dad's name and get a few quid off.
You know what, Stu? Let's do what we do in the event of a tie for What's the Most 90s. Let's put it to our social media followers. We'll make a post. We'll stick it on our Instagram and X and see what everyone else thinks, and then that can decide it for us.
I think that's the best way forward. And if anybody apart from my dad actually does have any of these, then please do get in touch with evidence and let us know.
Theresa, how can people find your 90s teenage diaries?
Okay, yeah, so they can go to teenage diaries, all one word, .substack.com, and there you can find like an archive of things that I've already shared in newsletters. They're all free to read online, and then if you sign up for the email list, then you get the new issues sent out to you as and when I write them, which is usually maybe about twice a month at the moment.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll put a link in our episode description so people can click on that and find the amazing diaries, because they are fantastic, and we heartily recommend people signing up and getting them into their inbox. So thanks again for joining us, Theresa. Nice to have a bonus guest, isn't it, Stu?
Absolutely is. And your last newsletter was great stuff. As I said at the time, I work for the Pharaoh and I get loads of dosh, made me laugh out loud. So thanks again for all the entertainment.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Well, I knew I didn't come on because you were bad mouthing the Joseph musical in the last episode. So almost in protest.
I apologise for that.
Time now for the main topic at hand, which is things we do not like about the 90s. So a bit of an unusual one for us. I don't know about you, Stu, but I found this pretty hard to think of 3 things that I didn't like about the decade, because obviously we love the decade. But how did you find it?
It was difficult to start with, but then once I got rolling, I found it quite difficult to stop. I sort of unlocked some sort of deep-seated box of memories which I'd maybe buried when making this podcast and rhapsodizing about the 90s. There are quite a few things that happened to me or that I endured throughout the decades that I didn't enjoy so much, and I'm ready to sort of spill my guts about them. If I'm honest with you, this is, I think, going to be a very cathartic exercise.
Well,
this could be our longest episode ever, everyone.
It's a shame we're doing this over Skype. I'm not going to be able to restrain you and drag you away from the mic. In that case, why didn't you start then? What's the first thing from the 90s that you didn't like or do not like?
The first thing I have here that I don't like about the 90s, this might surprise you, but it's Marks and Spencer.
It does surprise me.
Specifically, the flagship Bath branch.
Explain.
Well, the Bath branch of Marks and Spencer to me in the 90s just meant drudgery and boredom, because it meant I'd been taken on a shopping trip to Bath on a Sunday afternoon with my parents, and my mum had shares in Marks and Spencer, I'm sure, back in those days, and she would be in there for hours, and my dad, bless him, would do his best to try and ease the pain for both of us, really. So he would say, okay, Gina, you go off and do your thing in there. We're going to go off and do our thing. So we would go to Pink Planet Games Exchange because we were well into the consoles by then. So we'd go and have a look around there. We would go to HMV, places like that, and go and look at the CD singles, maybe a sports shop. Just go around basically and look at all the things that maybe my mum wouldn't be interested in. But then we'd go back to Marks and Spencer, and we'd have agreed to meet her at a certain point, and she wouldn't be there because she'd been distracted by something else or not quite got there yet, and there'd still be other things that she wanted to do. And the absolute worst trips of these were when I had to become directly involved, like when there was some requirement for school or something like school trousers I needed, and I would have to be there for fitting purposes or trying on, and it just still break into a little cold sweat when I have occasion to walk past that branch. I mean, my feelings have lessened about it over the years, so now I will go into the Marks and Spencer's branch in Bath if I need some work shirts or something functional, underwear, whatever. But I still think about those times and the fact that it just always meant boredom and drudgery, basically trailing around after my mother and waiting for her to finish. And I don't wish this to sound like I'm slacking off my mum or being harsh on my mum. Of course not. This is obviously through a bored child's eyes, and I don't wish to make it sound like I'm slagging my mum at all. Definitely not. But that's just the way it felt at the time. I have a distinct memory of the absolute worst Marks and Spencer's trip I ever endured. If you would like to hear that.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
This was also the worst one that my parents ever endured as well, because I vomited into my mum's cupped hands in the Marks and Spencer's branch in Bath.
But it really was bad.
She was wearing gloves at the time, So that was okay. But then she went and alerted her feet. She hadn't spilt a drop, to be fair. Maybe that's why I'm the safest hands in Pewsham that I am today.
Yeah.
She hadn't spilt a drop, and she still tells this story to this day. She went to find the nearest assistant to get some help, and she reckons that the assistant looked at her as if to say, "How dare you do this in our shop? This is disgusting," and really gave a short shrift over it, when obviously it was no fault of hers whatsoever. So maybe I've still got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that as well, because my mum spent so much money and time in there, and then in her hour of need, they were pretty short with her. So yeah, M&S in the 90s, not a happy place for me.
Well, fair enough. That sounds, yeah, especially that final story. I'm not surprised you harbour these traumatic memories of the place. I guess it's a universal story for any kid who grew up pre-internet shopping, really. The going clothes shopping with a parent in a department store, it just would be interminable, wouldn't it? Time does travel a lot slower at that age, and they just seemed bigger because you were smaller, I suppose, at that age. So you go in them now and they don't seem that big, but back then it was like that scene, the famous scene from Father Ted, one of the all-time great sitcom moments from any era, of them getting lost in the underwear department of the department store. But that is what it was like, wasn't it? It was just went on and on.
It was. I mean, my wife will tell you that I still am a big fan of saying "Dougal, we're in lingerie" when we have to pass through that area of a department store. But yeah, like you say, being smaller and time passing more slowly, especially when we had to go to M&S first for whatever reason, and then I would get to go and buy a new game for the Sega Saturn or whatever, and he just wanted it to be over and done with. One more thing before we move off Marks and Spencer's about the staff giving you short shrift. I was in there maybe 10 years ago, Christmas time. The Christmas decorations are out in the shop, and they have these big football-sized baubles suspended from their ceiling.
Yeah.
And I think I might have been with my girlfriend of the time, and I couldn't resist it. I headed one of the baubles. I gave it a proper Colin Hendry style clearance back. And it made a terrible sound. It nearly came off the string or whatever was suspending it. And yeah, I got filthy looks from everybody around me. But then again, I'm sure I wasn't the only person who had done that in the shop that day or that week. Yeah. So there you go. But yeah, don't vomit or go up for a header in Marks and Spencer, whatever you do. So what's first on your list of dislikes from the 90s?
Well, I'm going to read out a list of songs here. This actually relates to some stuff that Theresa was just referring to then. Mr. Blobby by Mr. Blobby in 93. Come On You Reds by the Man United Squad and Status Quo from 1994. Teletubbies Say Eh-Oh by the Teletubbies. And Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini by Timmy Mallet with Bomblerina in 1990. Do you know what all those things have in common, Stu?
Well, I didn't buy them all. I had two of them. Well, they're all novelty singles, of course. Are they all novelty singles that got to number one as well?
Exactly. They all got to number one. And then you've also got Zig and Zag, Them Girls, which reached number 5. And then Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat Mega Mix, which we talked about recently, which got into the top 40, along with the Coronation Street cast singing Always Look on the Bright Side of Life from 1995, which you discovered recently. Mm-hmm. And yes, they are basically all songs from the 90s that got into the top 40, and they're all absolutely diabolical. So that is the thing I have chosen here for my first selection, is novelty pop songs and mega mixes doing inexplicably well in the charts. And I just want to know what precisely was wrong with people in the 90s that made them think this was okay, because it wasn't like there wasn't decent music around in the 90s. You know, we've talked about it plenty of times on here. So many great genres and bands at the peak of their powers. So there was plenty of decent stuff out there. And then you had all this stuff that was somehow getting to the top of the charts. And I was wondering whether it was some sort of like post-Cold War, post-Thatcher, that optimism that was sweeping the nation throughout the 90s, that sort of freedom from the oppression of the Cold War and whatnot. And it's like it went to people's heads and they thought they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. And it's led to things like this. It just does my head in. When we're doing our random chart episodes or our Christmas number ones, and you've got some crap like Mr. Blobbit number 1, I don't know why adults were buying these songs, because it can't just be for kids. To get to number one, you've got to sell so many copies.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think any grown adult out there who went away from HMV with Teletubbies Say Eh-Oh in their bag, I just think, well, you didn't deserve to outlive the 90s, basically, because it's, yeah, I don't know what else I can say. I mean, I was wondering whether you think, do you get that anymore? Is there the same amount of novelty pop out there? I know there's like Lad Baby. They did get to number one repeatedly, but then maybe the other sort of like cast of Coronation Street singing this or that, is that sort of being replaced by people like Alexander Armstrong releasing serious Christmas albums, which then, sell bucket loads?
I think you might be right. I mean, first of all, just to say that, yes, the fact that Babe by Take That was not Christmas number one in 1993 is an absolute travesty. And I'm still very sorry about that, because I did contribute to it. Somebody bought Mr. Blobby on cassette for my birthday party that year. I would have been 5. So there you go. That's my excuse. I was 5 and I didn't buy it, but I would have preferred that they bought Babe, of course. I think pre-internet, when most people would have seen these things on TV, and when sort of your more run-of-the-mill TV shows even had massive viewing figures. Something like Noel's House Party probably got 3 times the viewers that, say, Saturday Night Takeaway does now, just because of the amount of choice and the fact that, we have the internet and we have streaming now. But when Noel's House Party was one of 4 choices or one of 5 choices. So that's, I think, how these things managed to get that sort of prevailing wind behind them when they managed to get to number one. Yes, Lad Baby is probably the closest thing we have to a novelty single in the modern times. But yes, whatever you say about it, and I happen to not be a fan of Lad Baby's output, but it was all for charity, and I'm sure that the money has gone on and done wonders for people who need to use food banks and people like that, and we should be very grateful for that, because of course nobody should have to use a food bank in this day and age. So at least that has come out of it. But those 90s novelty singles didn't have that angle, or at least I can't think of any that had that angle. I don't think Teletubbies Say Eh-Oh was released in aid of charity or any of the others that we care to mention. So yeah, I think the novelty single landscape has definitely changed, but it's probably something that we can just do without forever, really, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Although interesting to note that you put a football song in there. You put in Come On You Reds, and this is back obviously in the era when football teams would release singles when they reached an FA Cup final or when they won the league. And I mean, I'm interested to know that you put that in there, because I don't think we would class World in Motion or Three Lions as novelty songs.
That's true, yeah. I suppose that was more just an example of bad music, because it's kind of to the tune of, what is it to the tune of?
It's a song called Burning Bridges by Status Quo.
Oh,
that's what it's based on.
Yeah, okay, so I thought.
And I won't have you slagging off Status Quo either.
I thought it was like
you leave the quo out of this.
I thought it was a nursery rhyme or something. Yeah, well, that is a song that I've been cursed with. I think ever since you made me start watching Top of the Pops repeats on BBC 4, ever since I heard that song on it, it comes into my brain literally, and I mean literally, every couple of days. That chorus will come into my head, and I despise it. So,
and guess what, listener? We're going to play it in right now.
No, I'm afraid, Stu, I had to bleep that because I can't inflict that on our listeners. So
okay, we've had to rip the needle off the record.
Yeah. Right, what's your second choice?
My second choice is swimming.
Okay.
Swimming for me was the absolute worst part of the primary school week. So where we were at Caution Primary School on Pound Pill, I don't expect all of the listeners to have any grasp of Caution geography, although we do talk about Caution an awful lot on this podcast, obviously. But the Springfield Centre was about a 15 to 20 minute walk away from the primary school. So whenever we were lined up to go for swimming, we would have to pair up with a friend, hold their hand and walk in a sort of millipede style phalanx column of pairs of two up to the leisure centre. No high-vis jackets were donned in these days by the teachers, by the way, or the pupils. Indeed, it was just off you go outside and off to the swimming pool. So this used to necessitate, as a shortcut, and presumably by agreement with Corsham School, the comprehensive school, we would actually use a shortcut through the comprehensive school in order to get to the swimming pool. Otherwise, we'd have to go all the way around, and it would take forever. And I do remember that fondly, actually, because it was always a bit of a wonderment for me walking through the comprehensive school and seeing the older kids and having a little bit of a look at the school buildings and seeing what it was all about and having a look in through the windows at the lessons. And I actually do remember seeing a sixth form lad wearing the yellow and green Aston Villa goalkeeper shirt. I remember that clearly. And that must have been just after I'd started following the Villa, obviously, and sort of thinking, oh yeah, that's Mark Bosnich shirt over there. So it was always a bit of a wonder for me in seeing these kids who looked impossibly old, impossibly older than me, sort of students, and obviously I quickly got there myself, and then was seeing these primary school kids still walking up the school many years after me on their way to the swimming pool. But anyway, that's by the by. That's the good part about it. The bad part about it was I was never really any good at swimming. I'm still not that good at swimming now. The only qualification I ever achieved was my 10-meter badge, which I still have. It's sewn onto a suit jacket I've got. In fact, I was so poor at swimming at primary school that my parents had to sign me up for extracurricular lessons on a Saturday morning to try and get my confidence up a bit. So I remember going to those for a few weeks, and I remember my dad taking me sometimes on a Sunday morning as well, just for a bit more of a fun splash about to try and get me used to the water. But it was the whole thing of obviously being really cold when you go in the water for the first time and having to get used to it and going through those awful foot bath things before you go in.
Yeah.
And then just not being that good at it either. It took me ages to summon up the courage to go for my length, because obviously you had to start in the shallow end and go to the deep end, and I was quite nervous about that. I remember watching the other kids go for their length, and the swimming tutor or instructor would walk along the pool alongside as you swam. And I remember watching everybody go, and I was like I must have been one of the last, if not the last, child to attempt the length. And I finally summoned up the courage to do it, and I was going along, and I think actually I chose to do it backstroke because that was I could do backstroke, right? Because you didn't have to do it was the breathing I couldn't do, right? So obviously with backstroke, that's fine because your head's out of the water, so you don't have to breathe. So I remember, I think I chose to do it backstroke, and I was going along, and then I remember sort of seeing, as I looked up, you remember that sort of dolphin mural at the bottom end of the pool, in the Springfield Centre with like the length timing clock that used to go out minute by minute. I remember seeing that upside down in my vision. I remember, right, I'm there, and I sort of stopped, and I was about 2 feet away from the end, and because I hadn't touched the end, the tutor didn't let me have it. She disqualified me because I touched the end. So I never got my length badge, and I've never really got over that. I never really got on with swimming since. I'll go in the pool on a holiday and I'll do a few lengths, but no, it's not something that I've ever really got on with. If you will allow me a bit of indulgence here, and if I can take you to September 2000 and my first day at the aforementioned Corsham Comprehensive School. Day 1, lesson 1, Monday, swimming. So it was a real baptism of fire. Okay, I mean, would that happen now?
No.
Would that be allowed now? And we hadn't had, I think we've mentioned this at some point over the last few episodes, there wasn't any week induction where you would come up with your class in year 6 and you would go to a whole load of lessons over the week at Corsham School. I remember having a day, maybe a day and a half at best, to go around and get used to things and meet who was going to be my tutor in the September. And then we got the timetable through delivered a couple of weeks before, and it was day 1, lesson 1, swimming. Now, nobody had told us what to do. We didn't know whether we walked up to the leisure centre on our own or if we had to wait for somebody to collect us. We all decided to wait by H-block changing rooms, which were the changing rooms at the top of the school nearest the leisure centre. You had to sort of go out of school and cross the road to get to the leisure centre. And eventually, the teacher, Mr. You better bleep out his name there because we're actually quite good friends now. I see him around town and everything. But he eventually came down from the leisure centre where he'd been waiting for us and gave us a bit of a telling off for not proceeding straight to the leisure centre when apparently he'd left a message with an older kid to tell us. I don't know. But there you go. So swimming even got me off to a bad start at secondary school as well. And like I say, some wounds just never heal. What's your relationship with school swimming?
I think I felt similar to you. It was something I didn't like. It was the actual swimming itself. I was sort of okay at. It was maybe the thing I was most average at of all the subjects and activities I ever did at school. It was the thing where I was most in the middle of the class. So it was never like particularly scary to do, but it was a whole the getting changed and all the stuff that comes along with that. You know, when there's bigger kids and you don't, maybe feel that confident about your body, or it doesn't take anything to make someone take the mick out of you, does it, when you're at secondary school or primary school? And just being cold afterwards, and the swimming cap like pulling your hair and trying to avoid getting a verruca and all that sort of stuff. It was just, I didn't really like that. It was okay at primary school because it was just one class and I knew everyone. But secondary school, it was like, it wasn't great. And who was the last person to switch to swimming shorts from swimming trunks and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I wasn't a massive fan. There was something just sort of intimidating about it, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd managed to wipe the term verruca sock from my mind until you brought up verrucas then. So, so I remember having to utilise a verruca sock on occasion. And that was very unpleasant as well.
Yeah.
So, no, swimming, do one. I don't know.
Well, we've all towelled off, and it's now ready for my second choice. I mean, in hindsight, this now seems like quite a serious... I mean, it is a serious thing, but it is also linked to what you were just talking about in that it's very sort of school-focused. Because my second choice is casual homophobia, which I think is something the 90s were sadly rife with. So this first sort of started becoming a thing in my consciousness in primary school, which is so depressing, really, because, up to 11 years old, and it's already happening a lot. So I remember people using the term bum feeler, which is just like if you accidentally touch someone else's bum, they'd be like, oh, you're a bum feeler, therefore you're gay. And I don't really remember if people were using any other terms, but that very distinctly sticks in my mind. And I remember there being a point where some student said, accused someone of being a leg feeler because they'd accidentally touched their leg. So it was like it just extending to anything. Fortunately, I think that person was ridiculed for that, for like trying to take it too far. But this was like years 5 or 6, I think. And then secondary school, like it really kicked off to a whole other level. So this would have been from 96 for me. And the word gay, as I'm sure it was for anyone of our age, was just everywhere. Like it was completely ubiquitous as a term of insult or an accusation. So it could just be used as just a general word for bad, but also it could be an actual accusation if someone, I don't know, liked the wrong thing or dressed the wrong way, then they would be accused of being gay, and that was like the worst thing you could be. And then I think it was just sort of supported in a way by the culture at the time, and in TV and films, the sort of gay panic humor was everywhere. Friends, unfortunately, was quite an example of that, with like Chandler always being afraid of being seen to be gay. Like there was this ongoing joke that he was gay, or people thought he was gay. And in loads of films it was always, there's loads of gay panic stuff. I was sort of kind of comforted in hindsight thinking about how the Simpsons dealt with it, because obviously we both agree the Simpsons is the best. Well, I think we agree it's the best comedy of the 90s, one of the best programs of the 90s. But I think they dealt with it quite well. There was Homophobia, the episode from series 8, I think it was. So there's a gay character voiced by John Waters who sort of becomes friends with the family, and he's very openly gay and quite camp, and Homer's terrified that Bart's going to turn gay if he spends too much time with him. And it's all sort of resolved in a positive way, and it's a great example of how to deal with gay themes on TV at that time, I think. So I'm glad that it wasn't everywhere in terms of programs I liked, but it was everywhere. And we were still going to school in the time of Section 28, and obviously that was going to feed into it as well. And it just took a long time to fade away. And I'm hoping, I don't know, but I'm hoping that it's not like that now in schools. It's definitely not like that in comedy on TV and films and whatnot. But it was pretty bleak, I think, in the 90s, and I had to give it a whatever the opposite of a shout out is. I think just bring it to light in this episode.
I think you're right to do that, and I think we can all hope that we've moved on from how things were in the 90s, definitely. And people learn and they change. I mean, I was in a similar situation again around the time I started secondary school. There was a term, I don't really feel comfortable repeating it here, but there was a term that was used around the playground. I think there was a comedy character in the sort of zeitgeist at the time that was using it quite a lot in their show, and they were quite a famous comedy character at the time. So a lot of the kids in my year went around and used that. But I like to think, like I say, that is all left in the past, and through things like that Simpsons episode, which really was, I suppose, ahead of its time in a way, in the way that it dealt with those themes. And those positive depictions, I think, have helped us to get to where we are now, and hopefully things will continue to improve.
Homer, what have you got against gays?
You know, it's not usual. If there was a law, it would be against it.
Oh, Homer, please, you're embarrassing yourself.
So, Alex, for our third choice, we got a bit of podcast synergy going on here, haven't we? Because we've both chosen the same thing.
We have, yes.
So,
do you want to reveal?
I think it's well known to our listeners on the podcast. I'm a big Aston Villa supporter. Alex is a big Norwich City supporter. Now, of course, traditionally, our rivals would be Birmingham City and Ipswich Town, but there was an even greater foe that united the supporters of all other teams. And I hope you'll forgive the Freudian slip there, because we've both chosen Manchester United Football Club as a third thing that we dislike about the 90s.
We have indeed, yes. First thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, I think so. Quite a difficult thing to deal with, being a supporter of a less successful club of that era. I don't know if this is the case for you, but certainly there were a lot of my friends who were sort of jumping on the glory bandwagon at the time, who were sort of just getting into football and choosing to support the most successful team. I am willing to accept, before anybody writes in, that a few of my friends at the time had familial ties and were supporting Manchester United because their parents had supported Manchester United during the late 70s and early 80s when they were younger and the team weren't so successful. So I'm more than willing to accept that. But a lot of playground supporters definitely chose Man United just because they were the best team, and then felt that they had the right to sort of lord it over us for having picked a less successful team. And they just won everything all the time, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this was Sir Alex Ferguson's heyday. Basically, they won 6 out of the 8 Premier League seasons, including 1999 to 2000. They won the Champions League in that awful final in the was it the Bernabeu? No, the Nou Camp. Yeah. Which was just so painful to watch as someone who was not supporting Man United. It was the era of Champions League being on ITV Tuesday nights, and it would always grate with me that the commentators, invariably it would be, I think, Peter Drury or Clive Tilsley, would always assume that we were all supporting Man United because they were the English team, and it always did my head in, and I never was. And I always enjoyed watching them get beaten, even if it didn't happen that often. Yeah, I didn't like Ferguson. I didn't like Roy Keane. I didn't like Cantona. They all seem kind of just dislikable players. I don't mind them now. I have no problem. I think Cantona is actually quite cool in hindsight. Ferguson I've no problem with. Roy Keane, I'm unsure about. And yeah, they always beat us. I've got some stats here actually, Stu. You might know this off by heart, but for Villa and Man United in the head-to-head, do you want to guess how many times they played each other across the 90s?
Well, they were in the same league for all of that time. So let's say, including cups, because we always used to get them in the third round of the FA Cup as well, around that time. So let's say 20, 24, 25?
Oh, so close. 23.
23
matches. And how many of them do you think you won?
We beat them at home in the first Premier League season, and of course in the famous you can't win anything with kids game, first game of the 95-96 season, I think. But I don't think it can be any more than 5, possibly.
It was bang on, 5. Oh. Well done. So you won 5, lost 11, and drew 7. Norwich, because we got relegated in 94, I think, so we didn't play them as much. We played them 13 times, won 2 of them, lost 10, and drew 1. So it was not a good time to be watching your team play against them. I do have to begrudgingly admit that they have some great kits from the 90s. Their away kits especially were sensational. Some of them, the green and yellow. Of course, they've stolen that from us. Well, they haven't, but they kind of did. The Newton Heath kit was fantastic. The black away kit I really liked. Some of their blue ones are really nice as well. So, and their goalkeeper shirts, of course.
Yeah, I think we can assess the kits separately. I mean, I've already spoken about the purple Sharp sponsored Manchester United goalkeeping kit. I've spoken about that before, I've got a soft spot for that shirt. I didn't dislike any of the players in particular, I have to say, more than I just dislike the team as a whole. But I probably have to make an exception for Peter Schmeichel, who did obviously go on to play for Aston Villa, and his name was on the wrist strap of the first sort of proper pair of gloves I ever had. So I probably have to make an exception for the Great Dane, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, so it was the same for me as well in primary school, in that people were starting to pick teams to support around, would have been about 93, I think. So yeah, that's when everyone suddenly seemed to start supporting Man United, and I decided I had to pick a team to support as well, and I just picked one based solely on the colour of their kits, and that is how I ended up with Norwich City. And yeah, very quickly it was me against the rest, apart from Henry Conrad, who supported Liverpool. So there was one other person I knew who didn't support Man United, but aside from that, it was. And bearing in mind, listener, this is provincial northwest Wiltshire. This is not, Stockport or Bury or somewhere near Manchester. This is very far away. But
we should all be Swindon Town fans, really.
We should, yeah. As stark a proposition as that is, we should really, yes. But no, sadly not. And yeah, it was a tough time, wasn't it? It was a tough time. Ironically, they've now been replaced by the other Manchester team, and there's probably kids now like lamenting the fact that all of their classmates support Man City, even though they live in like Gillingham or something in the southeast. But yeah, things have changed.
Most probably, these things go in cycles. I can pinpoint the biggest Villa pain moment involving Manchester United, if you would like me to, which was the aforementioned third round of the FA Cup live on BBC One. It was a Sunday evening, as I recall, and Aston Villa did that classic time-honoured thing. They actually did it on Boxing Day, just gone, where they went 2-0 up at half-time and then contrived to lose 3-2 to Man United. And my friend James Topping, who I've spoken about on this podcast many times, a Man United fan who'd moved away by this point, phoned our landline to have a little bit of a gloat at me, which I recall quite clearly after that. So I think Steve Stone scored. I think maybe in that match. I can't quite recall, but yeah, there you go. That's a big Villa pain day involving Man United. But yeah, I think we can all agree that they're probably the most unlikable team of the 90s. And as we record this, I have to say they're back in the news again, all for the wrong reasons. And Alex, you can bleep this if you like, but VAR is shit and football is bent.
Agreed. And
solidarity with all Coventry fans.
Yes, let's not forget the official football team of the pod.
Of course. How could we forget? It'd be remiss of us to do so.
Well, that's our three main choices. Then, Stu, before we wrap up, do you have any final ones you just want to throw into the mix?
Yeah, a quick shout for soap operas in general. I know that we had a great episode with Will Hodgson, the great Will Hodgson, recently, where we spoke about the biggest soap moments of the 90s. But my memory of soap opera in the 90s is in the main being told to just stay quiet or leave the room and not being able to sort of do the things I wanted to do because my mum wanted to concentrate on the soap operas. And it was more than my life's worth to speak over any of the dialogue so that she missed what was going on. So, yeah, soap opera in the 90s was also not a good time for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got three things on my extras lists. They are the theme tune to Antiques Roadshow on a Sunday evening, computer games crashing all the time, and acid rain. They're my three things from the 90s that I didn't enjoy. Well, that's wrapped up our most negative episode ever, I think, Stu. How did that feel?
Well, like I say, it was pretty cathartic to get those things out in the open. I mean, there's a few, obviously, funny stories in there as well, which it was nice to recount. But on the whole, I think I'm looking forward to getting back to talking about the good things of the 90s.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of which, we will be doing just that next time, because we're going to talk about our favourite programme from the 90s, something I just mentioned, which is The Simpsons, of course. And we are going to be talking about series 3 and 4 with returning guest Max Goff, who's going to come back and help us talk about those two series. Stu, undoubtedly deep in the glory era of The Simpsons, so you must be looking forward to that.
The golden period has just begun. There are a few of my absolute favourite episodes here, which I'm going to be looking forward to discussing at length. So, yeah, no, really looking forward to having Max back on. I think that's going to be a great one. Absolutely.
If you want to get in touch and tell us anything about the 90s that you didn't like, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on our link tree, which is in the episode description below. And yes, this is a good topic. Actually, we would really love to hear from you about this, things you didn't like, because, well, I struggled. I know, Stu, you said that you found it quite easy as you started thinking about it, but I am sort of fascinated to know what people didn't like about the 90s. So please do let us know. But that wraps us up, I think, for this episode. So it only remains for me to say thank you again, Stu, and see you next time. I'm just off to dig out my swimming badges.
Thank you, Alex. Do get in touch, everybody, with things you don't like about the 90s and your 90s tattoos. It's goodbye from me. I'm just off to throw up into my mum's gloved hands.
Goodbye.
Ta-ta. You hate Cliff and you like Simply Red. You got it all wrong, mate. All wrong.
Exactly.
Oh, who'd win in a fight? Hucknall versus Richard. Imagine seeing that.
Both in their prime?
Yeah, in their prime. Yeah.
I think Cliff's got a viciousness that you just can't.
Yeah.
Cliff's got the edge, I think.
I think Cliff would just, like, at one point, after he'd taken somewhat of a dapping from Hucknall, he would just draw, like, a crucifix out from his robe. And this light would bring down, and Hucknall would be smited.
Get thee behind me, Hucknall.